Hello, Joe here from thirdweb, and today we're going to teach you how to create your very own Line mini app. With this app, you can create your own gaming or web applications that your users can open and interact with directly in Line. Really cool stuff. We're going to be using things like contracts, our thirdweb SDK, wallets, and account abstraction in order to provide a gasless experience for your users. It's a pretty involved process, so let's go ahead and get started. First up, we're going to be creating the Line developer account. If you already have one, perfect. You're going to go to developers.line.biz, click on login to console. And so here, if you already have a Line account, you can go ahead and log in with that. You can create a new account with an email. I already have a business account. Make sure that you guys, if you do use a Line account, you are going to be creating a business account for it as well. So I already have one. I'm going to go ahead and log in with my business account and put in my credentials. And so once we log in, this is going to be a pretty easy process. You can see I already have some providers here, but your dashboard might look empty, and that's okay. The first thing we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and click on create a provider. Line mini apps live under provider. So we're going to go ahead and create a new provider. And for this demo, I'm going to call it the rock, paper, scissors provider, right? So just rock, paper, scissors, just like that. I'll go ahead and create this new provider. And a provider is what allows you to create certain channels. So in this demo, we're going to be talking about a Line mini app channel, but you can also create other things like a regular Line login channel, messaging API, and depending on your region, even a blockchain service channel. So in this app, we want to create a Line mini app channel. We're going to go ahead and click on that. And so in each channel, these mini apps are contained to what region you would like to provide this service. And so for this demo, we're actually going to leave Japan as the default. We can upload any sort of imagery here as well. If I were to click this, and let's see if we can pick an image here. For the logo here, I'm going to go ahead and just select one from my file system here. Very simple, rock, paper, scissors. On the left hand, I can upload the image. On the right, you can see what it's going to look like in your Line mini app. Next up, we got to go ahead and define a channel name for this mini app. This is different from our provider name. This is going to be the name that your users will actually see. So here I'm going to say rock, paper, scissors. That's going to be the name of my channel. And the description is going to be play a game of rock, paper, and scissors. So we're going to have to define an email address that the Line developers can get a hold of for you when you submit your application for review. And finally, we're going to have to agree to all of the terms and conditions set forth by Line when creating these mini apps. So once all this information is valid and you're comfortable with it, we'll go ahead and hit create. And so here we have our terms of service. They have it both in multiple languages, so you can even go into English, read through them, and once you are done, you can go ahead and hit accept. And now that our mini app has been created on the developer console, from here we can go ahead and look at a few things. So what's going to be important to you when developing your own mini app is going to be under this page here called web app settings. So go ahead and click this tab. And if we scroll down under basic information, you're going to be given a few buckets of info. So for one, we have something called the LIF URL. This is what Line is going to use to connect your Line account to this web app, right? This is what the URL is going to show to our user. So that way, when they click on it, it's going to be going to the web app. Now, with our web apps, we have the capability of hosting them on another server. So when a user clicks on these URLs, you can actually redirect that user to another URL that you would like. So these LIF URLs are specific for Line. And anytime you want to deploy a game or a web app, you can define that URL down here in the endpoint. So we're going to be going through and working with these two values, the LIF URL and the endpoint URL for our apps. And now that we have that set up, next is going to be our application. So I have here a brand new Visual Studio. This is my preferred editor. You can use whichever editor you like. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new terminal. and I want to start a new project. So in order to do this, one of the easiest ways to do it is I'm just going to do npx thirdweb create. This will actually utilize a template that we have created, and this is going to install all of the dependencies, all of the it's going to set up your file structures all for you already, all with an easy to follow prompt system. So here, what kind of project you want to create? I want to go ahead and select app. What's the name of my app? I'm going to call it rock, paper, scissors. And then what kind of framework do I want to use? I prefer Next.js, but as you can see here, you can also do Vite as well. So I'm going to be doing Next.js for our application. And so here it's going to go through, install all of our dependencies. Okay, now that our dependencies have been installed, I'm going to CD into our new project that we've created. And here on the left-hand side, we'll see a couple of different things in our project structure. So if you're familiar with the Next.js framework, this should be very familiar to you already. You should, there's not really any surprises here. And the places that we're going to be paying attention to are going to be in our source folder, right? Where we have our client, our page, our layout, all of this cool stuff. And then our env files, right? So env files are going to be where we put in our options like our client IDs and our LIF IDs as well. So let's go ahead and get started. First, we need to include the line package into our project. And so the way to do that is, if you're using npm, it's going to be either npm install. If you're using yarn, you can do yarn add. I prefer yarn, so I'm going to do yarn add, and then the name of the package is going to be @line. And then the specific package we're going to be working with is LIFF. What this is going to do is this is going to allow us to connect our web app to the Line LIFF system, which is how Line uses think of it as the Line SDK, right? It's how Line allows you to create these mini apps and connect the two together. Okay, so now that that's installed, we can actually double check it here. We'll go to packages. We see it in our dependencies folder. That is good to go. Next up is we need to go ahead and get this package wrapped around our entire application. We want to make sure that this LIFF package is going to have access to our entire app and not only a portion. And the best way to do that is in Next.js, there is this file called layout. So in our layout file, this is where we have things like providers, and we can define things like what metadata we have, what we want to add, right? How we want to pass data into our app. So first thing we're going to do, I don't need this metadata. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. At the very top, this layout is going to be a client component. So what we're going to do is we're going to call use client. And what this tells our application is that anything rendered here is going to be rendered client side and not server side. So that's one thing. And now next up is we need to go ahead and import our package from that we just installed, right? So we need to import our LIFF package. And so we're going to be doing a couple things now. So next up is we're going to have a little bit of a tracker. This is going to say, hey, I know you came over from Line, and it's going to connect through our LIFF package. Now that you've connected, I want to know, are you in a state of readiness, right? And one way to do that and ensure this check is we're going to have the ability to check for this state. And so to do that, in order to check for the state, what we're going to do is we're going to use a something called a use state function here in React. So we're going to go ahead and copy this, paste this code in, import it from React. So what I'm saying here is I'm just creating a variable. Hey, is the LIFF ready? Are we initialized? And then we're going to have a setter for this. Once it is initialized, we can go ahead and set it to true. The default state is going to be false as we go ahead and load it up. Next up, we need to find a way to connect our Line mini app to our application. And remember, earlier I mentioned the LIFF URL, and that has a ID at the end of it. So in order to connect that, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using our LIFF ID. So if I were to go back into our developers console here, we can see our LIFF URL, and the ID is actually this section at the end of it here. Remember, the Lyft URL is going to be displayed entirely in line, but the ID itself is what is going to help connect us, the mini app, into our web application here. So here I've actually I've stated I'm going to get it from my env file. So let me go ahead and go to env. We're gonna duplicate this, change the name .env. And so we're gonna have a couple things. We're gonna have our client ID, but again, we're gonna have our Lyft ID as well. And so let me go ahead and copy that ID once again. And so we're gonna go ahead and paste our Lyft ID into here. Now our client ID is going to be a thirdweb specific thing that we get. And so in order to get this client ID, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and go to thirdweb.com. Let me share my screen here with you. We're gonna go to thirdweb.com, and in our dashboard, after logging in, we're gonna create a new project. This project is going to be called Rock, Paper, Scissors. We're gonna go ahead for our purposes. We're just gonna go ahead and allow all domains. When you guys want to deploy, make sure you actually put in only the domains you want authorized to use this API key. So we're gonna go ahead and hit OK. Because I've allowed all of it, we get this warning message, proceed. And so here I'm going to have our client ID and a secret key. Your client ID is going to be for your application front end, and your secret key is going to be for anything that authenticates from a back end. So you want to make sure that you guys don't expose the full secret key here. Make sure you copy and paste it into a safe place, so that way you can use it for any back end authentication, so and transactions that you might want to do. So in our case, all we need is the client ID. So I'll go ahead and copy that. We're going to go ahead and click on view project, and it's going to take us right into our dashboard for this project. Cool. That is set up. We're going to go back into our code, and we're going to go ahead and paste our client ID into our env file. Give that a save. And so back into our layout here, what we've done is we've already done our use state. We have defined our Lyft ID. We're getting it from our env file. And so now what we need to do is we need to have a use effect run on load for this application. And so to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to define a new use effect here. We're going to update our imports from React, and this is going to do a couple different things. So what's going to happen is once a user clicks on your mini app within line and it comes into your web application, right, whether it's a game or a generic web app that you guys might be using for shopping, DeFi, marketplaces, what have you, this is going to check, hey, did we initialize the Lyft? If so, cool. We're going to go ahead and set the Lyft ID. Not only that, we're going to go ahead and say, okay, the Lyft is ready. And when the Lyft is ready, then we can go ahead and display our app, right? Until then, what we want to do is we want to make sure that if Lyft is not ready, we'll just display some sort of loading. In our case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to display a div that says, hey, loading Lyft. So what that looks like is going to be very similar to this. And so again, here around our thirdweb provider, right, we're wrapping our thirdweb provider. And so what we're saying is, hey, is the Lyft ready? This is where we're using that use state variable, right? If the Lyft is ready, cool. Let's go ahead and show our app. Let's go ahead and start. If it's not ready, we're going to just display a very simple loading Lyft screen here. And so from this is going to be all the changes we need in our layout file. Remember, this is just our layout file. This is not anything to do with the game itself. So you can actually do all of this on the side, change whatever settings for your game, and it can still work, and it'll still work. So let's go ahead and move on. So now that we've done our layout file, let's go ahead and work on our actual app. So here we have our page. And so this page is a pre-generated page here. It is going to include things like the header, resources tabs, all of that stuff for part of the template that we used npx thirdweb create on. So all of this can go. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. And for our demo, I'm going to put in a page that I've already created here, and I'll walk you through it. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to do a very simple app. One, all it's going to have inside of it is this rock, paper, scissors component. And this component, we're going to go ahead and get from an import. Now, this component is our game itself. You can have any number of divs. You can customize this front end UI however you want. If you want your game in this page, you can do that as well. All you'd have to do is specify that it's a client component, use client at the top, and you're good to go. For our cases, I actually prefer splitting these out into components. That way it makes it a little bit easier if you want to kind of edit or customize anything, you know exactly where to go. So to create our component, what we're going to be doing is we're going to go here into our source directory. I'm going to right click. I'm going to go ahead and hit a new folder, and I'm just going to call it components, right? Plain and simple. After that, we need a file, and it's going to be called rock, paper, scissors, right? Uppercase, rock, paper, scissors.tsx. Cool. We now have our rock, paper, scissors component. Remember, this is our game component. Now, we have shown how to create this game component before, and it's a really good in-depth version on our Telegram mini app demo. So because we're using the exact same code here, I'll go ahead and just paste it, give you a quick rundown on what it's actually doing. So first up, again, rock, paper, scissors, nothing really special. We're going to define a couple things. Rock, paper, scissors. What are some of the results that we have? How do we determine a winner? We're going to have a random number generator, and it's going to pick one of the choices for the computer. The user will select their own choice, and then they'll go ahead and compare them, right? If we'll go through some of these things. If the player and the computer pick the same thing, it's a tie. If the player picks rock, if the computer picks scissors, what is that a win condition? If the user picks paper and the computer picks rock, it's a win, so on and so forth. And of course, anything outside of these three win conditions is a loss for the player. Now, next up, we're going to go ahead and do a few things. We need to define what contract we want to work with, because in our game, we've actually going to reward some tokens. So we need to go ahead and create a token contract so that way we can use it for our game. Now, in order to do this, again, it's going to be in our thirdweb dashboard. So let me go ahead and pull it up. Here we have our dashboard. Remember, we created this rock, paper, scissors project. We're going to go ahead and click on contracts, and I'm going to go ahead and deploy a brand new contract. Up here, click this deploy contract button. And so again, we were going to be deploying some tokens in order for our user. And to do this, we're going to scroll down here into our drop section, and I'm going to be using a ERC20 token drop. Now, this is a pre-built contract, so it's going to have all of the functionality that we already need for a point system. You can read more about it here, look at the functions as well. And once you're ready, click on deploy now. And so here we can actually define some cool metadata. We can add images. What's the name of our contract? In this case, rock, paper, scissors is going to be the name of our contract. And you know what? I'm actually going to just say points, right? Rock, paper, scissors, points. So I know that this contract is specifically for our point system. We can define things like primary sales, platform fees. And for our instance, none of that is going to be needed or necessary. The defaults are fine. And so we're actually going to be deploying this contract on the Kairos testnet under the Kaya chain. So Kaya is a gaming chain, and they actually have a testnet called Kairos that we can utilize for this mini app. I'm going to go ahead and click on deploy now. So you'll see this status window come up. And once this is connected to my wallet, you'll see that I actually have a pop-up in my MetaMask. It's going to show my transaction, and then I can go ahead and confirm it. So once that's confirmed, we will have another transaction. This transaction is gasless, and this is so that I can have the contract on my dashboard whenever I load in, so I don't have to go ahead and look for it every time. So I'm going to go ahead and confirm that as well. Cool. Now that that has been added, I can go ahead and click this blue button, view contract, and it's going to take me directly to my contract. Now, we've done a couple things already. We've gone through, we've looked at the line developer console. We've set that up. We've set up our our project, right? We have a rock, paper, scissors, and now we are setting up our contract itself. This contract is going to be what governs the point system in our application. And so there's a little bit of setup that we need here. One, we're going to go ahead and set up some claim conditions for this contract. Claim conditions are going to be what allow users to mint. You can have different options here. For our game, we want to say, hey, anyone is allowed to mint these tokens. Our game will control when these tokens are minted out. When it's a win, if it's a loss, we can also say, hey, this is not going to happen. Again, this is all within our game logic. So here is our claim condition. We're going to go ahead and say, hey, when do you want it to start? Here's the start time. How many tokens do you want to drop? Unlimited. This is fine. We want unlimited points for our whole user base. And then how many can a certain user claim? Unlimited as well. A user can get as many points as they'd like. So we're going to go ahead and save this phase. This is going to pop up a transaction in our MetaMask. So we're going to go ahead and save this. We're going to confirm this transaction. And so once this is saved here, we are good to go on our contract. Now, for interacting with contracts, we need to know the contract address, right? So I'm going to go ahead and preemptively copy our contract address. And I'm going to go back into our game logic. So in our game, we want to be able to interact with a certain contract. And so thirdweb's SDK actually has a very neat feature called get contract. This function allows us to work on any contract. And so in order to utilize this contract, we're going to go use a client. The chain, we're going to define a chain that we're working with. In this case, this is the Kairos testnet. And then again, in our env file, we're going to go ahead and define what contract we're working with. So next public token contract is the name. So here I'll go ahead and type out next public token contract. And that's going to equal this token address right here. Now, in order to define what our chain is, we're using something called define chain. This is another function within thirdweb, and we can just define the ID of the chain that we're working with. Again, this is the Kairos testnet, so we're using 1001 as the chain ID. And finally, we need to set up our client. Remember, we had a client ID that we've saved here. And so once we fill in our client ID into this env file, it will actually set up a client in our file here. We have a client file pulling in from our env. So once we fill in that information in our env file, we are all good to go with our application. So now that we've set up our contract, we're going to have a couple things happen. One is going to be we need to read our contract so we can get the balance of a token, right? In the front end, we need a way for our users to log in. Again, all of this has already been built in our Telegram mini app video. So here, if you're looking at it, it should be very, very similar to you. We're going to be using our connect button component. We're going to be adding in this connect button, and this button is going to allow our user to log into a in-app wallet. So in-app wallets are our social login methods. And here I've defined, okay, I have this in-app wallet, and I want my user to be able to log in through an email. So here I'm going to have this user come in. They're going to be able to enter their email, and a wallet will be generated for them. Now, not only am I going to have this wallet generated based off a user's email, but I'm also going to be able to sponsor gas for them. And to do that, in this account abstraction element of our connect button component, we're going to click sponsor gas equal to true. Once this is allowed, because Kairos already has account abstraction enabled on a chain level, any transaction, meaning when a user collects points, is going to be sponsored. Users don't have to have funds in their wallet in order to get these tokens, right? This means a lower barrier of entry. This means you can advertise to a wider audience. They don't have to be web3 natives. They don't have to know how to set up a wallet. All they need is an email address. They don't have to know any of these blockchain or web3 terminologies. You are actually providing the best user experience through thirdweb's connect SDK, including our account abstraction and connect button components. Really, really cool stuff. So We have our connect button for when a user logs in. And so now we have a couple different UI elements. We want to display the balance of our token, right? How many points does the user have? We want to be able to, if a user would like to log out, we can do that as well. Simple disconnect function. Again, all of this code was deep dived in our Telegram mini app. So if you want to see exactly how it was built and why we chose some of these functions, you can go ahead and look at that video. Now onto our line mini app here. Next step, we're going to go ahead and just update this dot slash components rock paper scissors. There we go. Easy as pie. Go ahead and save that. And so here is our app, right? If I were to actually run this, I can go ahead and hit yarn dev. It'll open up a localhost experience for me. I can go ahead and paste this into our URL. And so here is our app, right? If I were to hit load, you'd see the loading glyph. This is the initial connection between Line and our mini app. Because there is no connection yet, this is just from our web browser. We can see that it's already up and running. We have our mini game. We have our connect button component. We have the option for a user to sign in through email. If I were to go ahead and sign in, I can go ahead and it will ask for an OTP. And so let me go ahead and grab that. Here we go. Here is my OTP. And then so I've connected, right? I can see that it is my address that I've connected with. I can see the balance. I can see a rock, paper, scissors here. And so we are good to go. Now, this is just the web version, right? This is just our version of the application. And so how do we actually connect to Line in this instance? Now, there's going to be an additional step here. This is because this is a local development, right? We're using localhost. We need to expose this to the public web. We need to expose this so that Line can actually have an endpoint. Remember, we have in the Line developers console, we actually have a public endpoint URL. And so once we expose this URL to the outside world, we can update our URL and then have our Line mini app connect. Sounds a little confusing, but I'll go ahead and walk you through it here. So in order to do that, there's a service called ngrok, right? And ngrok allows you to connect a URL, a public facing URL to your local host. And so when to do that, I'm actually going to utilize the command line tool. And so here, once you've logged in, set up an account and downloaded everything, you can actually go to your command line and I'm going to type in ngrok HTTP and I'm going to do, hey, I want a public URL for my local host. So I'll do localhost 3000 because that's the port I'm using currently. Let's go ahead and fix our formatting here. There we go. HTTP localhost 3000. And so once you have that, it's going to say, hey, now we have a public facing URL and this URL here, boop, this URL is pointing to your local host, right? So I'm going to go ahead and copy this URL here. We're going to go back into our developer account. And so now I'm going to say, okay, I have my Lyft URL. And when a user clicks on this Line mini app, where are they going to be sent, right? What application am I sending them to? So here on my endpoint URL, because we're in the developing stage right now, right? We've used the developer Lyft ID, and now we're going to use the developing endpoint URL. I'm going to go ahead and edit this, delete this URL, paste in the one we got from ngrok, click on update. And so now we have this new URL. And here comes the really cool part. I'm going to go ahead and show you what this looks like on Line now. So let me go ahead and pull up my my phone here. So here I have my phone that I have here for you. I'm going to go ahead and copy this Lyft ID first. Let me make sure I copy my Lyft URL back to my phone. And so how do we get our application to our users, right? This is within Line. This is the Line application, right? You can see it's Line. I can go to chat. I'm going to create a new chat. So for testing, I'm just going to create a new group. We're going to click next. It's going to say, hey, you already have a group with this one person. That's fine. Let's go ahead and create a new one. And so let's set up this profile. We're going to call this rock, paper, scissors. And let's go ahead and create this group. Now in this group is where our users will paste in our LIF URL. LIF URLs are, again, only for line. They only work when you put them in line, and this is how you will be redirected to your line mini app. So once you have a LIF URL, this is what's going to redirect you to your line mini app. So we're going to go ahead and click this button here to send it. And as you can see, we actually pulled in our metadata from our developer console, right? So if I go back and I look at the icons that we pulled in and the information that we had set up, hey, we have the same icon. We have the name of the channel, Rock, Paper, Scissors. Down here, we have a description as well. And so if I click this, again, all within line, I'm still within line application. Click this button here, and it's going to say, hey, for your first time out. And so here, you're going to see this 400 bad request. This means that we have to first add our user as a tester. And to do that, in our line developers console, we're going to go to roles. And so we're going to invite a user to test this. Let me go ahead and invite my line account. When inviting, we're going to go ahead and set up an email and a role. So I'm going to go ahead and type in the role is going to be tester. And then I'm going to go ahead and type in the email for my line account. Okay, let me go ahead and send this invitation. And so now that the invitation has been sent, let me grab that line account email. I'm going to go ahead and go to the email, click accept, and then we should have our tester role. Okay, now that I've added myself as a tester, let's try this again. Bring back our line application, click on our line mini app. And so here we go. So first, we're going to go ahead and look at all of this provider information. We're going to go ahead and click allow. And so now this is the NG Rock that we're going to see. We want to make sure, hey, do you want to make sure that you're actually going to visit this? Yep, this is the site. Remember, we set that up before. We see our loading LIF. You can see now it's taking a little bit longer as it is connecting a line to our application. And here we have it, our application within our line mini app. Again, I can go ahead and hit connect. And I can specify that I want to log in with an email, right? So I can say, let's go ahead and log in with my thirdweb email. Go ahead and log in. It's going to send me an OTP code. That is something that happens with the thirdweb in-app wallet. So I can go ahead, paste in my code here, connecting to the smart account again, as you saw, and here we have our application. Now notice how a couple different things happen, right? So we have our smart account. You saw loading smart account, and now I can actually play the game. If I were to click on rock, hey, I just won. Perfect, right? I chose rock, the computer chose scissors, I won, and now I can claim my prize. So if I click claim prize, it's going to say, hey, you've won 10 tokens. Do you want to claim it? Sure, let's go ahead and claim it. This is going to kick off that transaction in the back end. Notice I didn't have to have any funds on the network in order to facilitate this transaction. It just happens automatically. So while this is going on, just know that your users don't have to have any funds, and this is all for free on their end. So this is it. Prize has been claimed on this dashboard, and I can now see that my balance has updated to 10. So let's go ahead and try again. Let's choose rock. Hey, I just won again. Let's try again. Rock, tie, try again, rock, tie. And as you can see, we can keep trying. We can even do different ones. See if we can win again. Boom, we've won. Let's go ahead and log out first. So here, balance of 10. We're gonna go ahead and log out. Now, I want to log back in just to make sure that that balance is indeed still the same. I'll go ahead and autofill that it's still the same, and we're actually getting it from the blockchain, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and put in my new OTP. And so I've logged in, and guess what? I still have my balance of 10, right? Really, really cool. I can go ahead and try again. Let's go ahead and do this. Boom, I've just won. I can claim my tokens. Once again, this is all going through our uh, our SDK components and updating your wallet in real time. So for that, as we saw here, once we're going through rock, paper, scissors, we're going to see a couple things, right? Once you choose once we want to claim our points, we're going to have this transaction button. And this transaction button is actually what's going to interact with our token contract. It's going to say, hey, let's interact with this token contract. Let's send some tokens to a wallet address, and we're going to be sending 10 tokens every win, right? That's exactly what we see in this application. And that's it. You created your own mini app. You can now start to service customers directly within line. So if I were to go back, guess what? I'm in line. I can go back. I'm still in line. I can open it up again. I can click rock, paper, scissors, click on the application, and again, it's going to load our LIF. You can put a pretty image here. It doesn't have to be just loading LIF. Again, that's in our layout file. And here's our mini game, right? Boom. I've auto connected. I have that op capability. I can turn that off if I'd like, or I can keep it on. And I, as the player, can come in, play my game, collect my points, and have a very, very good day. So that's it. That's how you can create your very own line mini apps for your users to be used directly within the application and provide a seamless onboarding experience with in-app wallets and gasless transactions with account abstraction. So until next time, happy building.